we can start with the official airhacks TV show. So welcome to the 3rd edition of airhacks TV. And why I started a bit late is because my computer forgot the date and time for unknown reasons. And I didn't saw that, so it was like 1st April instead of June. And I couldn't connect to the internet because I assume the certificates, the expiry of the date of the certificates was not correct. So I got strange certificate error and couldn't connect to YouTube, which I debugged a bit until I noticed that the time is not correct. But now everything is set up, so looks good again. Okay, so let's start with the show. I hope everything is streaming and doing well. So hopefully you see me right now. Can you see me? Just this is just a check from the chat. So everything fine? You hear me? You see me? Feel me? Hear me? No, not feel me. See me? Feel me? Hear me? Right? So this was like, so no response from the chat. Hello? Can you hear me and see me? And if yes, say yes. If not, I will try to debug my date and time problem. Yes, okay. So perfect. Now conferences. So I spent some time at conference, and I was at 2 conferences, JCon and GeeCon. Strangely enough, interesting enough, in one week. JCon was in Cologne and GeeCon was in Krakow. And what I did, I recorded lots of interviews with community members, and JCon was crazy. I met so many people that I almost missed my talk, and GeeCon the same. So I just had recorded that many shows that it filled, I think, the entire week of entire last week. So the first one is the impression, and then were just interviews. Hello to community members like Maven committers, Bach committers, and Bach is an interesting one. Expect an AXFM episode soon. Microstream committers, and this is the JReleaser committers, and I would say AI luminaries, and what else? Glassfish, and Microstream again, and Maven committers. Okay, and then I will spend a time on GeeCon, and this is I think was published yesterday. So it's just impression of GeeCon, which is, by the way, a great conference and happens in Krakow and in Prague. Okay, so this is like what I did last week. Of course, this was just 2 hours per day, but I worked with Java, of course, but this was my short vacations. So this was that, and so maybe start with the Time Machine show, because it's because we decided to do, and let's look at the questions. And they are actually still up to date. So when was it? It was in it was 2016. So 8 years ago, as always. So let's look at the first question. So there was Java 8 and JCache news. And by the way, I'm reviewing a project right now, code review, and they build their own cache, so still up to date. And is it possible to change persistence unit parameters at runtime? So this was like JPA. Still, now from time to time needed. So it is possible via, if you use Hibernate or Eclipse Link, you still do this, but there is no way to change the parameters in a running entity manager. You could, of course, if you can construct the persistence unit on the fly, but if you inject it, you inject that. Post-production microservice management, which is somehow related to the very first question we have today, how Lambda communicates to other Lambda. And AlexNet asked me, Maven, how to become a committer. I think it's good for the career. Is it good or is it not? I think it doesn't hurt your career, right? So, but it could be also fun, and you can learn a lot of stuff. So how to become a committer for Maven? I think it is fairly easy, to be honest. if you just take a look at Maven and you contribute, I know the Maven committers, they're really nice people. So there is some, just take a look at the shorts, and ping them. But I think the easiest way is to contribute some documentation you can start with and commit some stuff. And Maven is evolving, and I think they're actually looking for committers. So if you really are interested in it, just go for it. I think, yeah, everyone will appreciate it right now. So Alex, so if you like to become Maven committer, go for it. And even more interesting, if you are interested in more recent stuff, you can take a look at BLD, for instance. Take a look at my YouTube channel and airhacks FM. And the Bach thing is also interesting. What Bach is like a Java tools project first, so Java standards first build tool, which is a really interesting one. Okay, so post-production microservice management. What it means is, okay, how we manage microservices after they are in production. And of course, you get the same answer. Now, think about whether you really need the microservices, and then if you don't need them, then do not create them. In my current project, we have still, a minimal amount of JVM instances at runtime. So even lambdas are monolithic. So we have one lambda. In one project, we have two lambdas and a deleted one. So we have only one lambda with but several hundred Java classes, and it works great. So Wi-Fi versus Gerbos in production. This is also old story. Would you like, to have an open source solution and patch it for yourself, or you would rely on a vendor? So this is, and by the way, you could ask the same question. Should I run, Payara or Glassfish, or, ask the Omnifish guys to get support, right? So always choices. Interesting enough, properties injection and configuration in Java E. So I'm reviewing a project right now where they configuring everything by themselves, which is not good because they spend a lot of time doing that. And so the right answer for that would be right now, just use microprofile config and inject the config properties. It works, well for on premises. I'm using this right now in Lambdas, on Fargate. It just works. Also interesting question, where to put reasonable interfaces in BCEs, boundary control entity. So I'm actually interested. It will be interesting to see when I started with the BCE. I always have, the idea it happened last year, but obviously 8 years ago I already did it. And so interfaces you can put in B or C or E, it doesn't matter. There's always room for interfaces, and interfaces can get some revival. Because what you can do with interfaces right now is you can use it to declare a common type for data-oriented programming, which is great with Java 21, and for instance use interfaces on entity level. So what I used recently, I had to have a kind of interceptor and two implementations of the interceptor. This was an interface in boundary, and we also have sometimes interfaces in control level. For instance, in a project, we use S3, so we have like a persistence interface with at least two implementations. One was S3, and the other one was in memory and file persistence, for instance. So you can, if you have reasonable interfaces, they can be in B and C or NE. Also, question I get still: should a war also contain HTML5 assets? And the question is, or the answer is, sure, it could. Or should Quarkus ship a jar with HTML5 assets? But if you do this, you have to redeploy the entire thing, even if one CSS changes, right? So, and therefore, what usually happens, we put the HTML5 assets, means static HTML and CSS files, to an S3 bucket, and put the business logic in the backend. So the separation is just because of different lifecycle. So this was the HTML5 assets. So no questions, okay. So short example of security in jax-rs. A security in jax-rs, I mean, right now what we do, I don't know whether JSON Web Token, JWT, was a thing back then, but what you will do right now is to inject the JSON Web Token and then decode it and take a look at the roles inside. And yeah, this is what you could do right now. And you can still use roles allowed for more static security, but you could use both. So now, saving images in DB or not? I would say no, usually. Yeah. I mean, if the image is small, nothing against that, but usually you would like to offload that to, for instance, S3 or blob storage. But maybe some databases handle this automatically, so just go for it. Always, But what do you see? These questions are 8 years old and are still up to date, except the next one: how to set up Apache for a Payara and Whitefly. This one is a little bit outdated because Payara and Whitefly would run if you would run them in a Docker container on Fargate, for instance, or Kubernetes, and there will be no Apache. There will be the ingress controller, or it will be the load balancer in Fargate. So now, how to implement SSO via HTTP exclusively, and this is so usually it happens automatically nowadays, because with OpenID Connect it is always HTTP, right? So I mean this is already solved problem. So these were recapping all the old questions, and I would say they could be with a minor modifications asked today, right? Okay, so I will close that. There are some courses around the corner, and they are really around the corner. It's like almost like next month in 4 weeks. So I have to start to prepare some examples. I only have production examples, but I have to to rethink it. So the first one is about how to use basically serverless NoSQL with Java and using DynamoDB or Cassandra. I would focus on DynamoDB as example, and the second one is how to use or some ideas of using LLMs in enterprise. Okay, there's 2 workshops around the corner. They will take place. There are already more than enough attendees. And one point of time, I will close the registration because, we would like to keep the group small. So now, is too expensive to store image in DB? No, it is not, but the DBs are not optimized for it. So, and I mean expensive. If you run RDS, you pay, for instance, in the cloud, you pay $500 to $1,000 regardless what you store in the database. But of course, if the image is huge, you will pay more for storage. But even usually you pay more for the CPU than storage. So, but the databases are not optimized to store images, and usually you would like to store images in S3, and then you can access them directly via an HTTP URI. That's all. Okay, that's done. These podcasts. There are some interesting. I think this one is a newer one. This was published in May 16th, and okay. This was 5th May show. So there's one about Kotlin. So interesting discussion now how Kotlin happened and why Kotlin is good comparing to Java, or why I like Java, and why Kotlin is still a thing. Was nice episode that with Anton. Another one which is almost groundbreaking actually. There's an episode with Mr. Peterson, and what he did. He was able to the Alfonso accessed Llama 3 model directly from pure Java, and I even recorded a screencast on it, which is crazy. There is no Python between, nothing, is pure Java LLM integration, and it works great. And recently, Alfonso integrated Llama 3 as well, and I actually have to record a screencast as well, or at least play with it. The problem is my deadlines and time, so a little bit lots is going on right now. So this was this. Another interested AI related episode was about JVector. JVector is the embeddings, or a vector database which stores embeddings, and this is a very performant one. And in this episode we discuss why Java is better for database implementations. And by the way, Mr. Ellis is the author or committer in Cassandra, and he created JVector from scratch. So I would say interesting one. So I really enjoyed this episode. And one is lots happens, right? A LangChain for J. So there's a LangChain for J, and this is a deeper dive with Onyx and LLMs and Java with Dmitro Lyubarsky. And Alex, if you looking for your career, maybe you should contribute to LangChain4j. It's I know a very popular project right now, and Dimitro is a nice guy, so could be also an idea. And this was published, I think, yesterday. It was about continuous observability with the Digma project. Okay, this was the podcast world. Okay, so now the only question I got is happened on Discord, and this one is about Lambda and Lambda communication. And I thought about the question because usually we hear in the internet, okay, Lambda should not talk to another Lambda, which is true. But the question could be also asked, if a Lambda has to call another HTTP service, how to do this? Because whether it is another Lambda or not, it doesn't matter. So, first of all, if, for instance, this is the regular way with API gateway. What is an API gateway? Why you need that? With API gateway, you just get a nicer URL. So this is the only reason to use it usually if you start with Lambdas. And this is it implies this Lambda is exposed as an HTTP endpoint, jax-rs, and this Lambda uses HTTP client to call the other Lambda. What speaks against that? You pay twice. That's all. And if you have another Lambda behind, every call is slower, but this is no difference to Kubernetes calls. It will be also slower and slower with every call. Now, Lambda to Lambda, what this implies is, I would say Lambda and maybe function URL would be the name, function URL. What is function URL? This is like cheap API gateway. It means you cannot assign SSL certificates, so you get an auto-generated SSL certificate, and the URI is generated, so it's an ugly one, but it's cheap. So also go for it. Cheaper than API gateway. If you don't need nice URI, go with Lambda to Lambda. Then there is 2.1 and 2.2. What you could also do, you could use Lambda SDK with the invoke API to call the Lambda via SDK. Also works. Still the same problem. Maybe you get 2 cold starts, the first one and the second one, right? Then you can use step functions, which is perfectly fine. Step functions is like state machine. So you can have, the entire process exploded, and the step functions are working through the process. Could be good or bad. Under heavy load, step functions can be expensive. But what you can do with step functions, you can have, for instance, compensative transactions, which are not that easy with Lambda. So step functions is more like a state machine, right? So it will be like a workflow engine almost. And others, what I prefer is don't use 2 Lambdas. Just create one big Lambda and call your Java classes in memory or locally. Just regular Java call. This is the best idea ever. And with one Lambda has to call another Lambda, then it should be a very coarse-grained, a really coarse-grained use case. So then it would be a good one. And there's another possibility. So imagine you would like, to react to some. The another possibility is the number 5 is event-driven architecture, EDAs. What does it mean? Your Lambda could write to DynamoDB, Cosmos DB, S3 or blob storage. Let's say S3 and DynamoDB. And if you write to S3, you can enable EventBridge. And on every write to S3, an event is raised, or how to call it, is emitted, created, thrown. And what you can do, you can have an asynchronous Lambda which subscribes to the event. So we have one Lambda which only writes to S3 and doesn't know about another Lambda. So, and the asynchronous Lambda, very like message-driven being the another Lambda, it just listens to S3 event changes. And what it gets is it gets a JSON object with the key. This is the key means the file name, if you will, or in HashMap would be the key of the HashMap, and then it can read the object and decide what to do. So this is my preferred way. That we have one synchronous Lambda, which is in my projects always Quarkus with jax-rs, which writes to S3, DynamoDB or somewhere else. And other Lambdas or sends EventBridge. Oh, we have number 6. We can have one Lambda which sends EventBridge messages and another Lambda listens to EventBridge messages. Or you have one Lambda which sends SNS or SQS messages or even Kafka messages, but I would prefer EventBridge for business messages. Is the easiest and maybe even cheapest way to send. I think 1 million events cost about €1 or something like this. So this is all the integrations you can imagine. And of course, a Lambda can also talk to EC2 machine, to Fargate, to Kubernetes, whatever, right? But before you create multiple Lambdas and then afterwards think how to communicate between them, my approach would be to create one Lambda and communicate inside the Lambda and only create another Lambda if you really have to. Okay, if this is all I have to say. So either chat, you become active, ask me a question, or we are done. And this will be the shortest show in the history of airhacks TV, which is a good thing. And it is my fault, partially. I forgot to announce it today morning. So this is what I usually do, and this is why there are not that many questions. Okay, last question. Any questions? And if not, we are done for today. Just take a look. Maybe I forgot something. Actually not. There's no next conference. There are some. I will speak at Hamburg Java user group, but in Christmas. Then also in Vienna, and also invited to, I think, to Silesia Java user group. This is like my yearly show, and there are a couple of other Java user groups which I still have, to contact, and WJAX conference for sure, and yeah, this is what happens. So if there are no other questions, I would say thank you for watching. See you at conferences. airhacks Live in July, and there are a lots of episodes of airhacks FM in the queue. So so the show gets more and more popular, which is amazing. So it is interesting. So thank you for listening, and thank you for watching, and see you next month.